very warm welcome to the brand new edition of Policy Watch. I'm Kriti, Mishra. Today we'll analyse two important developments: National Digital Communications Policy 2018 and Online Incorporation of Limited Liability Partnership. But first up, National Digital Communications Policy 2018. The Union Cabinet has approved the new telecom policy to attract investment and create 4 million jobs in the sector. The policy focuses on use of modern technologies. 1 million people will be trained for building new age skill. The objective is to enhance the contribution of this sector to 8% to India's GDP from 6% in 2017. And for more on this, I'm joined by Mr. Sewak Sharma, Chairman, Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. Welcome to Raj Sabha Television, sir.
Yeah.
So, telecom sector is a very important sector in India's growth story. Now, this new policy supplants the National Telecom Policy of 2012. So, what are the important objectives and highlights of this new policy?
Yeah, thank you, Kriti, for asking this question, because I think, the last policy, as you said, was announced in 2012, and that was called National Telecom Policy. This one is called National Digital Communication Policy. And I think, in a way, it is a great departure from the earlier policy, because this now subsumes telecom as one of the components of the infrastructure, because it is now digital communication infrastructure, and data is the main ingredient out of this infrastructure. So now this policy aims to effectively, promote the first aim of Digital India, which is to provide ubiquitous bandwidth and as an infrastructure to citizens. And so what it aims is to provide a ubiquitous, affordable, convenient communication infrastructure to the people of India. So I think that to that extent, it basically has a number of components, it calls missions, through which it will achieve these broad objectives of providing a digital communication facility to its people.
Taking a cue from what you said, Mr. Sharma, how will this policy ensure high-speed broadband penetration to all citizens of India at affordable rates?
See, Kriti, there are 3 missions on which this policy is based in some sense. They are called Connect India, Propel India, and essentially, digital security. That is basically secure India. So in the Connect India component of it, essentially it lays emphasis on infrastructure. So infrastructure for a telecom or a digital sector obviously means the fiber, let's say, cable laying in the country. And it seeks to achieve a fiberization of the current telecom infrastructure. As you know, the current telecom towers, only 1/4 of the current telecom towers are connected through fiber. The rest are still on the wireless, and basically it seeks to ensure connectivity of all the towers. It ensures rollout of BharatNet, and it also, seeks to sort of rationalize the levies on this entire sector. Also ensure that the licensing framework is sort of put in place in such a manner that it facilitates participation of various stakeholders, such as the telecom service providers, the infrastructure providers, the government, the academia. So everybody collaborates to build this great infrastructure. It also seeks to create new sort of paradigms, such as creating Wi-Fi hotspots, which are interoperable throughout the country. So in a way, to make the connectivity more ubiquitous. Obviously, it seeks to ensure investment in the telecommunication infrastructure. So these are some of the instruments, both the policy instruments as also some of the investments which the government itself is making, such as BharatNet, which will ensure that we are able to achieve this objective of connecting India. On the second objective, if I can continue,
yes, sir,
is to ensure that we innovate around this whole ecosystem. So investment, innovation, creation of IPR, and actually indigenous manufacturing of equipment is the other part, which is the Propel India component of that mission. The third, of course, is to ensure that we ensure security of this digital infrastructure, because Today, security has become extremely, extremely important, and that's the third mission of Secure India.
So, how will this policy establish comprehensive data protection regime to safeguard the privacy of individuals?
Yeah, certainly, because the third part of the policy to ensure the digital security. Now, digital security will obviously include the data privacy and data protection, adequate encryption of the data in the entire system. And if you remember, recently TRAI had brought out a recommendation to the government relating to ownership, security, and privacy of data in the telecom space. So I think this particular, and of course, as you know, the overall data protection law of the country is being framed as per the recommendations of the Justice Krishna Committee report. So I think the telecom space and sector will have to work within the overall contours of the data protection law for the country. And it will also have, if there are specific requirements for the sector, we will have to incorporate those requirements also into the policy or into the operations of that policy.
And how will this policy pave way for $100 billion investment in telecom space?
Look, there are investments which are going to take place, and there are three broad areas of investment. One is the area of infrastructure. So essentially, once for example, what is going to happen is newer breeds of technologies are going to come up. We are going to have 5G, and the country is already preparing itself for rolling out 5G. And 5G will require a huge amount of investment in terms of the fiber, in terms of the devices, the sensors, and other things. And there will be business models for it. Because please understand, telecom today is not a specific one sector. It's going to become a platform for all sectors. If you have IoT, Internet of Things, if you have machine-to-machine communication, you have big data, and you have artificial intelligence, then you are going to, really create a platform. So essentially, what is going to happen is it's going to become a convergence of various technologies, which are information technology, the telecom, and other kinds of artificial intelligence, big data, etc. So it is now going to expand exponentially. That's my sense, because 5G is not merely building upon 4G. 5G is really a quantum jump.
That's right.
And it has got certain, USPs like low latency, heavy throughput, and machine-to-machine communication. So this technology obviously will require investment, and it is not as if investment will not have the adequate rate of return. So I think if you create appropriate, environment, policy environment, investment will come. So 100 billion investment is not really a very heavy target, a very high target for the next 5 years. I think it's a very moderate target which we are looking into, because we have currently 1.5 million kilometers of fiber, and I think there's a huge need for putting fiber, and I really think that we should achieve at least 5 million kilometers of fiber in the next 5-6 years. So that will bring in investment. Investment will also come in the form of newer breeds of innovations going around, because India is a very interesting country in the sense that we have built a huge digital infrastructure, soft infrastructure. I mean, imagine we built an Aadhaar, the digital identity infrastructure, which recently the Honorable Supreme Court held it to be preserving privacy and not violating any of those, things which the critics were saying that, it violates privacy, it creates a surveillance state, and etc., etc.
Right.
So we now have an extremely, scalable digital ID infrastructure. We have a huge payment infrastructure, payment systems which we have made, UPI, for example, BHIM, the Honorable Prime Minister launched. So I think with all these innovations, and there are a huge number of products which we call typically India stack, which is built around these. So therefore, the other part, building innovative systems, is going to be another area where investments will come. And of course, the securing this infrastructure is another third area which will bring in investments. So investments will come, and investments will come because we are putting forward a slew of policies which are actually investor friendly, which are very easy, and which actually take into account the ease of doing business.
Absolutely, sir. Point well taken. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us those crucial inputs. So this policy will ensure India's effective participation in global digital economy. Time for a short break. On the other side, online incorporation of LLP. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Policy Watch. Let's take a closer look at online incorporation of limited liability partnership. Incorporation of LLP through a complete online system has been turned into a reality. Ministry of Corporate Affairs has achieved this milestone in the direction of ease of doing business. The move will cut time, cost and procedures. And for more on this, I'm joined by Mr. Ajay, former Secretary, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, and Mr. Nitin Desai, former Chief Economic Advisor, Government of India. Welcome to Pratibha Television, gentlemen. Let me begin by asking you, sir. Of course, we'll discuss about the nitty-gritties of this development. We understand that LLP is a body corporate, a separate entity from the partners. But for our viewers and all the budding entrepreneurs there, can you elaborate the concept of LLP?
It is, as the very name implies, it is limited partnership, limited liability partnership. The liability of the partners of the company is not unlimited to the extent that everything which they own, etc., can go away in case of insolvency, bankruptcy, etc. It is limited to the equity which they put in. That was the original idea. And in order to encourage entrepreneurship, the people take the entrepreneurship by very definition involves what? Risk taking. That's what we all say, the profit is the reward for risk taking.
Risk, yes.
So this idea, instead of in limited companies and others, this is the easier way to go get people into business, entrepreneurship. We've seen within the families, people becoming partners. That's allowed. The entire concept was to make it easy and take away what are the constraints which people might have to set up ventures. And it seems to have taken off because we have provisions, separate provisions under the company law for LLPs compared to the corporate sector. We have also separate provisions in our income tax laws for this purpose. And I think the concept was a good one, and that has resulted in a large number of people taking to new enterprises compared to when you needed to organize larger number of. Now you can do a limited partnership with 2 people.
Right.
You don't need to have 7 partners or 11 partners.
Right.
Under a cooperative law, you need 11 guys to get together, and under a regular joint venture company, what they call a joint stock company, or otherwise you needed many more.
Mr. Desai, India has jumped to the 100th position, leaping 30 notches in World Bank's ease of doing business rankings. This was the highest ever jump by any country, and now all eyes are set on the top 50 bracket. So how important is this development for achieving that target?
I'd say it's important, but not. I won't blow too much of a trumpet on this. It's fine. It's good. It's worth doing. See, basically, a limited partnership. We always had partnerships, and there's an Indian Partnership Act. The difference between a normal partnership and a limited partnership is that in a normal partnership, the partners are jointly and severally responsible for what the partnership does. In the case of a limited partnership, I'm not responsible if one of the other partners commits a malfeasance or does something wrong. My liability is limited to what I have put in, and I do not carry the liability for the partnership as a whole. Basically, how does it differ from a company? Somebody will ask me. The way it differs from a company is this is designed for the owner-manager. If I'm a shareholder in a company, I actually, under the law, don't actually run the company. I have to have a board of directors. The board of directors appoints the management, and they run the company. But in the case of a limited partnership, the owner is also the manager of the company. It is designed basically for startups or professionals and other such people. And we have a separate act for this. It's not under the normal Partnership Act. And the other point is that it has a legal character. So it can borrow, it can buy property, it can do many things. But the liability, the tax liability, etc., is of the individual partner.
Right.
I get so much income from the partnership, I'll pay tax on it, and so on. So in that sense, it is a cross between a company and a partnership. It has some of the characteristics of a company, limited liability, and it has some of the characteristics of a partnership in the sense that the owner managers are together. It was a good idea. I had actually written a report on technology and ventures in 2006 for the government, where we had argued strongly for this. We had also argued for limited liability corporations, but that's a different story. And if I see the numbers, a very large number of the LLPs are small.
Right.
But frankly, it's really in the middle level where it really takes off. And it's a very good setup. When a group of youngsters or somebody wants to get together to set a startup, they don't have to go and commit themselves to setting up a joint stock company with shareholders and so on. It's also somewhat easier to dissolve than a company is. So I think all of these were positives. And by making it easier for people to register an LLP, yes, surely it will help a lot of youngsters who would probably be intimidated by Form 1, Form 2, this requirement, that requirement, and so on. So I welcome this move, because I think LLPs are very good ideas in a country where a lot of young people are trying to be entrepreneurial, and making it simpler for them to do that is not a bad idea at all.
Mr. Dua, for online incorporation, how is the entire process re-engineered to move to an automated mode?
Ministry of Corporate Affairs, I would call it as one of the more progressive ministries of the government, which way back 10 years ago or 12 years ago had started a program called MCA 21, Ministry of Corporate Affairs 21 Steps to ease the ease of doing business vis-a-vis their laws. And one of the earliest issues which they attended to was incorporation. They have over the years brought down the number of days during which it will take to do online incorporation to 2, and the attempt is now to reduce it to 1.
Right.
3 things they are actually able to do now within 2 days. One is name search. Earlier, it required 14 days notice to be given if you were accepting a particular name. MCA will take at least, or the registrar of companies will take 14 days time minimum to get back to you whether this name can be allotted to you or not, because the rest of the names were not on a computerized and which could be immediately checked, and that used to take very long. Now what they have done is not only within 2 days you are being incorporated, but also you are, if you do not have a DIN number, a director's number, that also is through re-engineering. If your name is not there, you also apply within that period. Third, you also get a PAN or a TIN for the company, which I thought was a very good thing. And what has now been sought to be done for LLPs from the 2nd of October, when this announcement was made, is exactly along those lines. You can get a title for your company, the partnership. Now, let me not call it a company, partnership. Similarly, incorporation certificate, as also your DIN number and TAN or a PAN registration to be done online, which is earlier it was not covering LLPs. That's been done. So I would say one of the major things which the World Bank has pointed out, even when we jumped 30 positions, was, all right, how did we jump 30 positions, Kriti, if you recall? They said, now you can get credit easily.
Exactly.
You can get electricity easily.
Right.
Third, minority interests were being better protected. Those were the 3 major issues, while the World Bank report had highlighted the constraints as well. And one of the constraints was that it's still not easy to do business in India. It's still taking time to get construction permits, and it is also taking time to enforce contracts. These were the three on the con side.
Right.
So the first aspect of it, of starting a business, it has been addressed, I would say, by the steps of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, both for the corporate sector as also now for the partnerships.
Absolutely. Mr. Desai, how would be the name allotted through an e-format? The name.
And you have to apply. It is not any different from you have to apply, register your name, and then if somebody else has already used the name, then you'll have to revisit it. But as he says, you basically register your name, get the DIN. Two of us want to set up a partnership. We both have to have DINs and the digital ID in which we can get. And then you get allotted your PAN and the TIN along with this. So it's not a very complex process, and what they've done is they've simplified it by being able to do it online instead of your having to fill out forms, some mistake has been made, somebody verifies that form, etc. That sort of thing has been greatly simplified. So I'd say he's right. The MCA has been much more alert and innovative in using information technology. They recently went through, or many of us went through the exercise of the KYC 3, the whole business of an online verification of the process. So I think all that has worked. And the main point is that what does it mean in terms of the whole startup culture?
Yes.
And I believe that in many ways this will open up opportunities for young people who want to come together, who may be a little intimidated by the whole business of having to set up a private limited company also. Incidentally, there are no restrictions on how many partners you can have under the LLP. Under the Indian Partnership Act, under the old Partnership Act, under normal partnership, you can have only 20. Here, there's no limit. You can have 500 if you want. And
Minimum
you can have 500.
Yes.
And this is it's very similar to what we call special purpose vehicle, where a group of people who want to do something come together for that purpose and set up a limited liability partnership for that purpose. And in many ways, it's akin, it's not the same as the SPV, but it's akin to that. And I think this is a good idea. It's a good idea because it'll make it easier for people to come together for 5 years, let's say, to do something. And after that, they'll see. They may become a private limited company, they may go their separate ways. So I'd say it's in terms of ease of doing business, I would welcome it.
It's a welcome move. But sir, what are the rules pertaining to foreign limited liability partnership now?
The rules in what sense?
Are there any changes in the rules pertaining to?
Not as of last week or anything, as was mentioned earlier. There is a full-fledged act for limited partnership enacted about 10 years ago. Under that, from time to time, regulations keep getting issued by the Ministry of Company Affairs with respect to different aspects. So with respect to incorporation, this was a new regulation issued last week or 3 days ago, about which we are talking today. So this is an ongoing process as the government finds the need, as the partners companies approach it, partnerships approach it, they keep making changes. So there is nothing like final change, but all of this is being done towards making India more easy to do business, as well as making things easier for the people who have jumped into the fray. As was mentioned, most of them are first timers. There are housewives who have got together to have limited partnerships, even to make papads in Bombay.
Right.
On the same model as the larger one, the Bombay's papad.
Papad, achar.
Right. All this kind of, which is a good venture. Each one is responsible to the extent of his or her equity put in. No more than that. You pay your own taxes. Your partner, if the partner has got 60% share, you've got 40%. Then on 60% of the profit, your partner will pay thing, and you are not liable if she doesn't pay her taxes. Right. You are not liable if he or she does not part with her share when the company gets into problems. So as was explained, that's fairly simplistic rules, and I'm quite sure, as in number of other countries where we see the startup culture probably better than us, in the West in particular, we would keep learning from them and keep making our laws more contemporary and simpler.
You want to pitch in, sir?
Yes, actually, our law is better than a lot of the laws in the Western countries. I happen to know this since I was involved a little in the earlier stages. Our law is actually better in many ways than some of the laws which exist in other countries where there are more restrictions on the limited part of the partnership. It's so I would say the law is a good one. It's the way it's being implemented is sensible, and I think people will respond to this. And I've seen already, I've checked the numbers, and I think there's something like 30,000-40,000 LLPs already. Many of them very small, and I'm sure not all of them will necessarily fructify. But so what? That's a startup culture.
Right.
If 10 things start up, only 2 are going to make it. But that's the way today's world works. You must allow scope for this type of 10 things are started up, and 1 thing and 2 things work.
Absolutely. So it's a welcome move. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this very crucial development. So certainly a very important step for ensuring ease of doing business in India. That's all we have for you in this edition of Policy Watch. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Rajya Sabha Television.